Stay where you are. Measurements in progress.
We never used to be this way. Always so bad, deep with me in love forever.
Hey guys, so welcome to the studio. Today, again, one of my favorite topics for music producers. It's acoustic treatment. As you know, here in the studio, we've done everything possible to get the rooms to sound as good as we could. The B Studio back wall, corner absorbers, here this back wall, corner absorbers in this huge studio. We placed multiple absorbers in the rooms. There are a lot of people always asking me if it's really necessary and how big the difference actually is. And for all of the beginners, let me give you a simple example. For most people, it's easier to understand visual things than actually listening really carefully. Also, your ear gets used to a certain sound really fast. So the difference between an acoustically treated room and not treated room is as big as just changing the light for a video. So let's maybe switch out the normal light here in the room to something more suitable. All I changed was the light. So as important it is to light things to make them look better than just the ugly light from the ceiling, it's the same with the acoustic treatment. It's the same kind of effect. If you can't see properly what you're doing, like just try imagining trying to fix a photo, the color shift of it, on a monitor that isn't calibrated. And same in the studio. If your room isn't acoustically treated, you can't hear what you're actually doing. There is no way you will be able to master in a not acoustically treated room. And also music production is really hard. Yes, to some degree you can get to know your room and your speakers, but if you have a ton of reverb and a ton of reflections, it's so much harder. It's almost impossible and you're wasting a ton of time. And if you're now wondering how to fix your acoustic without spending too much money, there isn't really a solution. Like, there are two options. One of them is you just do the acoustic treatment. Option number two, and actually it's best to use both options. Option number two would be to use software to try and correct the sound at your sweet spot. Just the correction without any treatment is probably also not a good idea. Best is to do both to get the best result. I've already used software in the B Studio to correct it as much as possible. Today it's finally time to do the same here in the A Studio. And I'm actually quite excited to measure this room and see how much it can be even optimized on top with the software to get the most out of those huge speakers. You know what kind of speakers I'm talking about. I think I'm talking quite a lot about my huge big bad boy speakers, but they're just beautiful. So basically all you will need for this is your normal laptop computer you're producing your music with, this very special measurement microphone by SonarWorks. This entire software hardware combo is by SonarWorks. I think they do the best solution for this software correction. I've tested a couple of others and this one was the one that I actually personally liked the most. Not only the result, but also being able to adjust quite a lot in the software. This gives you way more control. You can mix between the corrected version and the not corrected, adjust it yourself, make sure that it doesn't alter the bottom end or top end, but we will get into all of that. So yeah, the mic, the computer, the software, a sound card with phantom power, because this mic needs phantom power, and of course a cable. Mic connected, phantom power engaged, give it a little gain, and then you use the software by SonarWorks called Reference for Measure. It's like specially made just for the measurement. You open it up and it just says measure your speakers. You click OK, go through a couple of steps to adjust your setup, make sure you get the right loudness. Should maybe disable the air function, because as you know, the sound card here is like an air function boosting the top end, and you want to have like as little interference in between as possible. So if your sound card lets you EQ anything, get rid of it. That's the measurement sound. You will hear quite a lot, just trying to get the gain all set. So it's basically asking you to hold the mic like this, like in the middle between both speakers on ear level, and then just move around the room and do whatever it says. Next up is measure the speaker distance. Okay. Luckily I got a really long cable. Finally all done, like running around, holding it like this for 3-4 seconds, then aiming it. It's not the most fun in the world, but again, really worth it. I now got the graph for this room, and I have to say I'm really happy actually with the result, because it's quite close to being actually flat. It's not bad for the little acoustic treatment we did. We were lucky that the ceiling was already acoustically treated entirely, and then all of these absorbers, back wall absorption, thick like this, and the front corners are also absorbed, so that's definitely helping a bit. The software does the last couple of dBs that wouldn't be really possible to get with acoustic treatment, or you would have to spend a ton to get it right. And once your acoustic treatment takes care of the reverb, because that's something the software can't do, no software can remove reverb, it's like impossible, but you can actually use it to correct the response in your room and make your sweet spot sound as good as possible. And while we're already at it, let me show you the software really quick so that you get a nice overview what it can actually do. So in the middle you see the graph, the corrected one, and the simulated. You have the dry, wet knob that I was talking about that is really handy. If the correction is too much for you, you can just dial it down or up and adjust it to your liking. You also get a button for safe headroom. You can also switch it into mono. You can emulate speakers, like known speaker brands, to make your speakers sound like they sound, just to have a virtual second pair of speakers, kind of. I think the most important that it does, and that's something a lot of other companies don't really do, it can kind of hack the sound in your computer and put itself in between of your output, so that it runs through everything you're listening to on your computer. It's also in between your DAW and the speakers. Other manufacturers, they have a plugin that you have to put on your output, master, chain, and then get rid of it before bouncing. And if you forget about it, it just sounds really horrible. So I really like how they built the software. It totally makes sense. For the distance and how actually this room now sounds different, it's hard to describe. It sounds a little tighter, way more linear, almost like a little too much. I might go in there and adjust the curve a little to my liking. I would love to play it to you, but you're not sitting here in this room, so it's pretty much pointless. But let me still like position this camera at the sweet spot with the good Rode mic and try to catch it before and after. You will just hear the difference and maybe get an idea for it, but it's of course not the same as sitting here and actually being able to hear it. So yeah, that's the difference with the correction, without the correction. It's a change that is definitely worth the price of this software. It's not overly dramatic, luckily, because this means we did an amazing job. And this room is really huge. The bigger room, the easier it is to control frequencies. If you're in a tiny room, the software might do even more. I've used it in the B Studio, there it's doing a little more. And I also gave the software to a friend for a couple of days to test it out. And in his room, it did a huge change, especially to the stereo image, because one of his walls was entirely treated differently and had a window than the opposite wall, and the frequencies. I mean, it corrected it really in a nice way. But again, I see it more as a support than like being the only thing you do about acoustic treatment. So maybe if you're on a tight budget, get it and see what it's doing for you. It will definitely correct your frequency response in your room. And then maybe add slowly and steady acoustic treatment to also control the reverb time, and then you will have a place in your studio where you will be able to hear what you're actually doing. This is so important. If you ever wonder why your mixes don't translate to other systems, why your mixes do not sound like everyone else's mixes, it's mostly due to not being able to hear what you're doing, and of course the experience. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little overview of this plugin, the difference it can make for your studio, and a little bit of explanation. Don't think of it as like the magic thing that does everything. It's supporting and it's doing its fair share. So if you're interested to check it out, I will link it down below in the description, and we'll see us tomorrow back again here in the studio making music.
Said that we would never